have taken economics in your degree classes. Anyway, I can assure you that we'll be going through only examination point of views. So it will be easy for you to understand the basic concepts, the basic terms that we will be dealing in this topic. Here we'll be having 11 chapters for the exam. And the first topic is fundamentals of economics. So before starting a topic, it's very important to understand what that subject is. So here it is very important to understand what economics is all about. See, economics has been derived from a Greek word oikonomia. See, all these points are important. That's why I'll be specifying them. Economics has been derived from a Greek word oikonomia. Basically, it denotes the concept of household. Okay. See, household, that is, we are all from households. And in a household, we deal with some questions like, from where do we get commodities, isn't it? We require so many commodities in our day-to-day life. So are we producing all these commodities? No, it's not possible, isn't it? So from where do we get these commodities? Who produces all these commodities? These commodities in economic terms is called goods and services. So you can see the difference between goods and services. One is visible and the other is invisible, isn't it? So we are in need of so many commodities or goods and services. So once again, I'll just go through this point. Economics has been derived from a Greek word, oikonomia. Oikonomia means a household concept. That is, in a household, we require so many commodities. That is, goods and services. But we are not able to produce all these things. So from where do we get these? Who produces? How do we satisfy our wants? So these questions are dealt in economics. So you can write down a definition for that. Economics deals with the proper production, distribution, and allocation of goods and services. Once more, economics deals with the proper production, distribution, and allocation of goods and services. So it is very important to understand a subject before we go deep into it. Okay. So economics, it deals with the production and how these commodities are distributed among the population. Okay, I hope that part is clear to you. So next we have to learn about some economists. In this topic, we'll be dealing with so many classifications. We have to learn so many definitions of economics, the major economists. Okay, so all these things are very important in the examination point of view. So the first economist that we are going to go through is the father of economics, Adam Smith. Please note down, the father of economics is Adam Smith. See, Adam Smith, in the year 1776, these years are also important, okay? He has contributed to the world of economics. See, it was in the 17th, 18th century, Adam Smith, without the help of any internet, Google, anything, he has contributed a major work to the world of economics. The name of the work is An Enquiry into the Nature and Causes of Wealth of Nations. See, here you can see the major contribution of economics, An Enquiry into the Nature and Causes of Wealth of Nations. So as we go along, you can take these screenshots of this, of these PowerPoints, of these slides. See, Adam Smith has studied about how the resource wealth is distributed among the different economies of the world. See, an inquiry into the nature and causes of wealth of nations. How the resource wealth is distributed among the different economies of the world. So this study is what Adam Smith has made on. And also there was a major criticism, that is, this study is materialistic in nature. Okay, materialistic in nature means, see, wealth is a resource which does not mean or which does not show how much satisfaction an individual has got. Okay, so wealth is something that cannot tell you directly how much satisfaction or how much welfare a person has got. So because of that, this theory has got some negatives, and the main criticism here is it is materialistic in nature. So these things we have to learn. Economics from the Greek word oikonomia. Father of economics is Adam Smith, and his major contribution is an inquiry into the nature and causes of wealth of nations in the year 1776. That is very important. And the major criticism here is it is materialistic in nature. And because Adam Smith has given more importance to the resource wealth, this definition is called wealth definition. So in this topic, we are dealing with the major economists and also how they have defined economics in their terms. So the first definition is wealth definition. And the wealth definition to economics was given by Adam Smith. Okay. Now moving to the next slide. See, economics can be divided into different schools of thoughts. So there are certain things that are not included in the textbook. So I just want to clarify all these things, because when you go through the textbook, you will be going through that. You'll get these words. Okay. See, now we'll go to the next economist, Alfred Marshall. Alfred Marshall, he is a neoclassical economist. His work is Principles of Economics. So please note down the definition. The definition according to Alfred Marshall is that economics is a study of mankind in the ordinary business of life. So here they have given more importance to welfare than wealth. Okay, earlier importance was given to wealth. That's why it was called wealth definition. But here, Alfred Marshall, he is a neoclassical economist. They have given more importance to the welfare of the people. Let's just go through the definition. Economics is a study of mankind. So economics is the study of us. How we deal with so many situations. We require so many things, how we satisfy them. So that is what economics is about. In the ordinary business of life, that is in our day-to-day life. That is the definition of economics. Since it is giving more importance to the welfare of the people, this definition is called welfare definition. So the second definition is welfare definition. So now we have learned two definitions. The first one was wealth definition by Adam Smith. The second one was welfare definition by Alfred Marshall. Now let us go to the next slide. Another economist is Lionel Robbins. See, all these economists you have to learn. We are not going through many economists, just a very few. So all these economists you can learn now itself. So we have learned two economists, Adam Smith and Alfred Marshall. The third one is Lionel Robbins. Lionel Robbins is also a neoclassical economist. His definition is quite big. Economics is the science which studies human behavior as a relationship between ends and scarce means which have alternative uses. See, this definition is the presently accepted definition of economics. Okay, economics is the science, that is, according to the neoclassical economists or according to Lionel Robbins, economics is considered to be a scientific subject. We know that we learn economics in the arts group, isn't it? But still, economics is so different from other subjects like history, politics, because it is always changing. Nothing is constant there. It keeps on changing, like price, exchange rate, international trade, GDP, inflation. All these things keep on changing. So because of that, we can say that economics is a scientific subject. Also, it studies human behavior. So again, here they are giving importance to the human welfare. As a relationship between those two terms are very important, ends and scarce means. So what do you mean by ends and what do you mean by means? See, means means resources. How we can get what we want. So that is means. And ends means wants. Okay, you can note down those points. Ends are the wants, what we want, our desires. See, our wants or our desires, they are not limited, isn't it? It's not numbered. There are so many. It's unlimited. You cannot say how many there are, because once you finish writing today, next day again you will have so many wants, isn't it? So ends are unlimited, whereas means are scarce. So that is the relationship you are studying in economics. In economics, you can say that it is a scientific subject. It is dealing with the human behavior. That is how we behave. And also, it shows the relationship between unlimited wants and limited resources. But still, they have alternative uses. See, the limited resources, we know that resources are limited, they are scarce, but they can be put to alternative uses. See, I can give you a simple example, like suppose you're having an amount of 5,000 rupees with you. Okay, we are all having the same amount of money, but we are not going to deal with it the same way. See, according to our priority, we can buy medicines, we can use it for like purchasing some clothing or goods for our house, like some durable goods. So our needs are different, our priorities are different, isn't it? But the resource was the same. It was scarce. We had only that limited amount of money. But we could put that to alternative uses. So I hope that definition is clear to you. Economics is the science which studies human behavior as a relationship between ends and scarce means which have alternative uses. Not only Lionel Robbins has also given importance to two other aspects also. Like man is a rational being. Man is considered to be a rational being in economics. That is, man has got the power to think rationally. He can make useful judgments, okay, based on his priority. Also, man can make a choice. So all these things you have to learn together with Lionel Robbins. And since here we are dealing with scarce resources, this definition is called scarcity definition. So now we have got three definitions. The first one was wealth definition by Adam Smith. Second one, welfare definition by Alfred Marshall, a neoclassical economist. Third one, scarcity definition by Lionel Robbins, again a neoclassical economist. Okay, so I hope that part is clear. Now we can move on to the next slide. Next slide, please. See, economics can be classified into two different core subjects. In this topic, we are learning so many classifications as well. We have gone through some economists and their definitions. Next, we can see how economics can be classified. Economics can be classified into two core subjects. The first one is microeconomics. And the second one is macroeconomics. You can understand from the terms itself, isn't it, what it is dealing with. See, microeconomics, it deals with individual entities. Microscopic. Okay, so here studies are made on individual entities. Like you can study the behavior of a firm, of a commodity. A commodity's demand, its supply, somebody's personal income, So that way you are studying about minute or individual aspects. So that is what is studied in microeconomics. Okay, microeconomics deals with individual entities. The examples you can note down: personal income, behavior of a firm, behavior of a commodity's pricing, its demand supply. Okay. Another name for microeconomics is price theory, because mostly here we are dealing with prices of commodities. It is also called price theory. Again, there is a father for microeconomics, and that is Adam Smith. Okay. Now moving on to macroeconomics, it deals with aggregates. Unlike micro, it deals with aggregates. Like there you studied about personal income, here you will be studying about national income, GDP, inflation, money supply. Okay, big terms. That is things that affect an economy as a whole. So that is what you will be learning in macroeconomics. Macroeconomics deals with aggregates. So it is also known as aggregative economics. Please note down, it is also known as aggregative economics. Examples: national income, GDP, inflation, money supply, etc. Also, the father of macroeconomics is J.M. Keynes, John Maynard Keynes. He is a modern economist. We had classified the schools of thought into classical, neoclassical, and modern. Okay, so Keynes is a modern economist. Okay, now we can move on to the next slide. So we'll just have a recap. Definitions of economics: Adam Smith, wealth definition; Marshall, welfare definition; Lionel Robbins, scarcity definition. See, when you are, suppose you are going to start a business of your own. Okay, we may have that dream, isn't it? But it wasn't possible because of so many other problems. Suppose we are going to, or suppose we want to start a firm, a small business venture. So we definitely face so many questions. Okay, these questions are called central problems. These central problems are faced by any business entrepreneur or any economy. Questions like, what should we produce? What should be there in my firm? What is it that I should be selling? Okay, these questions. So these questions are called central problems. These central problems are faced by any entrepreneur or any economy. So basically there are three central problems. The first one is what to produce, isn't it? A major question: what to produce? What is it that we should be producing, or what is it that we should be selling in the locality or to the society? Okay, so what to produce, it mainly depends on the demand, on the consumer demand for the commodities of goods and services. Next is how these goods are produced. What are the raw materials, or what are the resources that we should utilize for the production of these goods? So please note down, there are basically 4 factors of production. There are 4 factors of production. First one is land. Second one is laborers, then capital. Fourth one is organization. These are called factors of production: land, labor, capital, and organization. So maybe we don't have land, what we can do, but still we want to start a firm. We can take a land, isn't it? And pay a remuneration for that. And that is called rent. So like that, there are remunerations for each and everything. For labor, to pay wages or salary. Capital, there is a rate of interest. And also the organization gets the profit from the business. So that becomes the cost of production. Okay. So how these goods are produced, the second question deals with which are the basic raw materials, or which are the basic factors of production. There are 4 factors of production: land, labor, capital, and organization. So whether our firm should be labor intensive, whether it should be capital intensive, how much of technology we should utilize. Okay. That all depends on what we are going to produce. Now, the third question is, for whom these goods are produced? For whom? Who should be our consumers? Okay, you should think from the producer point of view. So who should be our consumers? So these are the central problems. Okay, how many central problems are there? There are 3 central problems. What to produce, how these goods are produced, for whom these goods are produced. Okay, we can move on to the next slide. Next, we are going to classify economies. See, economies can be basically classified into market economies, command economies, or mixed economies. That is, it depends on who is having the most contribution in the market, who is having the most voice, okay, who can have the most market decisions made in the economy, whether it is a government or whether it is private individuals, or whether both of them are complementing each other. So based on that, we can classify economies into 3. In the first case, government will be backing them. So in that case, we can say they are called command economies or socialist economies. Or if it is a sector, you can say it is a public sector. Okay, the first classification is where government is having majority decisions made in the market. So that type is called a command economy. You can note down that point, that term command economy, because that is what we are not using usually, isn't it? Socialist economy, you know, public sector, you know. So you can note down the word command economy. Examples like China, Cuba, Korea, Vietnam, these countries, Latin American countries, these countries basically fall in the command economy category. Then there is another classification where private individuals are taking majority decisions in the economy. Private individuals, majority decisions only. Okay, not complete decisions, majority decisions only. So that type is called market economy or capitalist economy, or if it is a sector, you can say it is a private sector. So you can note down the point, the word market economy. Okay, market economy is another term for the capitalist type of economy. Economies like Singapore, Australia, US, Europe, New Zealand, all these economies, they fall in, mostly they come in this type. But now you can see that all these economies, even if they were market economies or even if they were command economies, now they are complementing each other, the private sector and the public sector, that is the government and the individuals, they are complementing each other. So that is the third type of classification, that is mixed economies or joint sector. India is the best example for that. So we'll just go through that once again. Here we have classified economies into 3: market economies, command economies, and mixed economies. And also in the 18th, 19th century, there was a country that had come very close to being 100% capitalist economy. 100%, almost 100%. That is, there was no government intervention. That type of economy is called laissez-faire economy. That type of economy is called laissez-faire economy. Biju, the next slide, please. Laissez-faire economy, it existed in England. Of course, it's an imaginary situation now, but it used to exist in England. So we have completed first chapter. The name of the first chapter was Fundamentals of Economics. We'll just go through these slides once again. Biju, the first slide, please. Chapter is Fundamentals of Economics. Economics has been derived from the Greek term oikonomia. That is, it means the concept of household. In a household, we require so many commodities. These commodities in economic terms are called goods and services. So how these goods and services are produced, who distributes them, how is it allocated to different sectors, all these things are studied in economics. Father of economics is Adam Smith. Adam Smith is a classical economist. His major contribution is an inquiry into the nature and causes of wealth of nations, how wealth, the resource wealth, is distributed among the different economies of the world. It was in the year 1776. It had a major criticism. No work is complete. Materialistic in nature. This work is considered to be a bit materialistic in nature. But since wealth was given importance, this definition is called wealth definition. Next slide. The different schools of economic thoughts: classical, neoclassical, and modern. Next one. Next economist is Alfred Marshall. He is a neoclassical economist. His work is Principles of Economics. His definition is economics is a study of mankind in the ordinary business of life. That is how people deal, how they need resources, how they have their wants, and how they can satisfy these wants. So these things are studied in economics. Since it is giving more importance to welfare aspect of the people, this definition is called welfare definition. Next slide. Next economist is Lionel Robbins. He is also a neoclassical economist. His definition, it is a very big definition. It can be asked part by part. Okay, so give more importance to this definition. Economics is the science which studies human behavior as a relationship between ends and scarce means which have alternative uses. So economics is considered to be a scientific subject. It studies about human behavior. It shows the relationship between wants and our needs, resources. Yes. Ends are or wants are unlimited. You have to note down that point. Ends are unlimited compared to the resources, and resources are limited. But they can be put to alternative uses. Suppose it's a piece of land, you can utilize it according to your priority. You can build a house, you can build a mall, you can do farming there. You can just keep it like that. You can sell it after a few years. So it is all based on your priority. Since we are dealing here with scarce resources, this definition is known as scarcity definition. And also here in economics, according to Lionel Robbins, man is considered to be a rational being, very logical person, taking very logical decisions. Also, man can make a choice. Okay. Next slide, please. Economics can be classified into two core subjects: microeconomics and macroeconomics. Microeconomics and macroeconomics. Microeconomics deals with individual entities, whereas macroeconomics deals with aggregates. Individual entities like personal income, behavior of a firm, behavior of a commodity, pricing of a commodity, its demand, supply, how it behaves in a particular locality or in a particular sector. The father of microeconomics is Adam Smith. Aggregative economics, macroeconomics also called aggregative economics because it deals with concepts like money supply, GDP, inflation, all the aggregate kinds. The father of macroeconomics is J.M. Keynes, John Maynard Keynes. He is a modern economist. Okay, so next slide. You can see the definitions and their economists: Adam Smith wealth definition, Alfred Marshall welfare definition, Lionel Robbins scarcity definition. Next slide, please. There are three central problems. There is, it depends on what to produce, how these goods are produced, and for whom these goods are produced. Okay, what to produce depends on the demand of commodities in the local market. How these goods are produced depends on the factors of production. For whom these goods are produced depends on the consumers. Next slide, please. Types of economies. The different types of economies are capitalist, socialist, or mixed economies. Capitalist economy can also be known as market economy. Socialist economy can also be known as command economy. Mixed economies or joint sector. Okay, you should note down the examples also. So there was another economy that had come very close to being 100% privatized economy. and that is UK, United Kingdom, and that type is called laissez-faire economy. So I hope that first chapter, fundamentals of economics, is very clear to you. Okay. We shall go through some MCQs. Can you please put the next slide, Biju? You can find the correct pair here. You're having economists on one side and their definitions on the other side. Yes, you can unmute and you can give a response.
Third option. Third option.
Third option. Three.
Option 3, madam.
Option 3, let us see. Adam Smith, wealth definition.
Wealth definition.
Yes, Alfred Marshall.
Welfare definition.
Yes.
Leonard Robbins.
Scarcity definition.
So I hope you're not going through your notes and giving the answer, because it
No,
should
ma'am.
be by heart now. Because I have taken it as simple as possible, being a new subject for most of you. So don't go through the notes and give the answer. You should try to give it otherwise. Okay, that is good. The answer is third one. Okay, next slide. The relationship between ends and scarce means.
Ends are unlimited and
Unlimited and limited.
and scarce means limited.
B.
Option B.
Answer B.
Sure?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, you're sure. Okay. Let us see. Ends. Ends means our wants. Wants are unlimited.
Unlimited wants.
Means are resources, and resources are scarce.
Limited.
Yes, that is, they are limited. So the correct option will be option B.
B.
Yes, unlimited and limited. Okay, good. Next slide. Who said man is a rational?
Lionel Robbins.
Leonard Robbins. Three.
I'm getting only very few responses, 3 or 4 responses only. I think there are more.
Answer 3.
3, ma'am.
Yes, you should all come forward. You can give a chat also. Okay. The answer: man is a rational being.
Lionel Robbins.
Lionel
By
Robbins.
Lionel Robbins. Yes, good. Next slide, please. The term alternative uses.
Second option.
Resources can be used
Rationally and judiciously based on man's needs.
1.
Second.
Option 2.
Yes, have you gone through all the options? First one is resources are numerous. Then resources can be used rationally and judicially based on man's needs. Resources are not scarce. Resources need to be based on choice. So alternative uses means resources can be, yes, option B. Resources can be used rationally and judicially based on man's needs. Yes. Next slide, please.
J.M. Keynes. John Maynard Keynes.
Option 3. J.M. Keynes.
Option 3.
Yes.
Option 3.
Yes, the correct answer is option 3, J.M. Keynes. Okay. Next slide, please. Microeconomics is also
Price theory.
Theory 1.
Option
1.
that is very easy, isn't it? Microeconomics is also known as.
Price theory.
I hope all are participating, isn't it? Price theory. Yes. Next slide. How many
Three.
problems?
Three problems.
Central
Option
problems
3.
are 3.
Option 3.
Option 3.
Yes. There are 3 central problems.
What to produce, how to produce,
How to produce, whom to produce.
Home to food.
And for whom? 3.
and for whom.
Okay, next slide, please. What are market economies?
Capitalistic.
Capitalist economics.
1.
Option 1.
There, I hope. Yeah, market economies are.
Capitalist economy.
Capitalist economies.
Capitalist. Okay. Next slide, please. Laissez-faire economy.
England.
England.
Existed in-
Option 3.
England.
It existed. Okay. Now it is an imaginary situation. Now it is not
Yeah, it
possible.
was there in 19th century.
Yes, the 19th century. Yes, good. Okay. Okay.
Mixed economy.
India is a mixed
Mixed
economy.
economy.
India is a mixer.
Mixed economy.
Economy.
So, are there any doubts for this topic? So, our next chapter is demand and supply. Here, we have to deal with two different theories. You have to take it like a theory. Okay, demand, so many concepts in demand you have to learn. Then we will be going through supply. Then we will combine both demand and supply and see how they work in the market. But here we are going through theories only in economics. Okay, nothing in the practical aspect. So you have to note down these concepts as it is. So first we can go through what is demand. Okay, demand and its different concepts. See, in the earlier chapter, I said that man has so many wants. We have so many wants. We have so many desires. But can we say that all these desires are called demand? No, we cannot say that all the desires of the mankind can be called demand, because there is something that differentiates them between the desire and the demand. It is the purchasing power or the price of the commodity. It depends on the price of the commodity, whether a commodity has a demand or whether it is just a desire. See, we have so many wants, we want so many things. Suppose I want to have a luxury villa, that anybody will be wanting, isn't it? But if I have the purchasing power for that particular commodity, only then will that villa have a demand in the market. Otherwise, what happens? It will just remain as a desire. Okay, so you can see there is a definition for it. Demand, it is the desire backed by the ability and willingness to purchase a commodity. You should be able, that is, you should have a purchasing power and you should be willing to purchase that commodity. Only then will you have, or you can say that commodity has a demand in the market. Okay, so the first concept in demand. Is the board clear to you? Is the board clear, visible?
Yes, ma'am, it is.
Okay. So demand. So demand depends on the price of the commodity. Demand depends on the price of the commodity. But we have learned that economics deals with the behavior of the individual, isn't it? How is it that we behave? If the prices increase, how is it that we behave? If the prices increase, normally demand decreases. Yes, that is for normal goods. So you should note down that also. In the case of normal commodities, there is inverse relationship between demand and price. Okay, there is inverse relationship between demand and price in the case of normal commodities. So what are abnormal commodities? Just on this side you can note down. What are abnormal commodities? See, abnormal commodities means there are certain commodities for which, however the price is rising, the demand will also go along. Can you give examples like?
Basic needs.
Yeah, basic needs. For what? Medicines, isn't it? Life-saving medicines. Yes, medicines you can say. What about fuel? Yes. Also, there are certain commodities like perishable commodities. Okay, perishable commodities. So perishable commodities like milk, meat, vegetables, fish. You've been to fish market, isn't it? You know, when there is a crowd there early morning or whenever that catch comes, you know that definitely you will not get it for an easy price, is it? But you are willing to pay that price because you want it for a good quality, isn't it? So you're willing to pay for that. So normally there are, you can say the commodities are what? Normal goods and abnormal goods. Abnormal goods means like life-saving medicines. Even if their prices increase, there will always be a demand for it. Likewise, fuel, perishable items, then some luxury items like gold, diamond, isn't it? Always when the price is rising, the demand highest that diamond, it will have maximum demand it will be having, isn't it, in the market. So those are the abnormal commodities. Otherwise, in the case of normal goods, here we are dealing only with normal goods. So normal goods, always there will be an inverse relationship between demand and price of the commodity. Okay? Yes. Now, let's see what is a demand schedule. Okay. Demand schedule. Schedule means it's a table. You are given a table. Like this, you are given a table. One variable is price and the other variable is quantity demanded. Okay? See here, you are getting a table. There are variables in it. Price and quantity demanded. So this tabular form is called a demand schedule. Okay? Simply saying schedule means a tabular form, but in demand schedule, it shows a relationship between price and quantity demanded. Okay, that's clear now?
We can't see what
Now,
you have written now.
I have written price here and quantity demanded. Otherwise, you can see the slide. Demand schedule, it shows the relationship between price and quantity demanded. Okay? Demand schedule, it is a tabular form. Like you have a table. And in that table, there are two variables given. See, we said that demand depends on price, isn't it? So I'm taking those two variables in this table. One side I'm taking price, in the other side I'm taking quantity demanded. Not demand, not quantity, it is quantity demanded. Okay. So I have got a table here. This table is called demand schedule. Clear? Okay. Now, when I have this demand schedule, I can draw a graph, isn't it? Now, I'm going to draw a graph here. Taking two axes. You can draw this graph also. Y-axis, X-axis. Y-axis, I'm taking price. X-axis, I'm taking quantity demanded. And now, we know that the prices and quantity demanded are inversely related, isn't it? So the graph I will be getting will be having this shape. This graph, this curve is called demand curve. You can check the slide, demand curve. It is the graphical representation of the demand schedule. Okay? Demand curve is the graphical representation of the demand schedule. So I have taken two axes here. I have drawn a curve. This curve is called the demand curve. Now you can note down some properties of this curve. You can note down properties of the demand curve.
Slides are not visible, madam.
Slide is not visible.
For all same like that or
No, you will have to alternately press on the slide and ma'am whenever you want to see either.
no, we
It
can
is visible. It is visible.
Yes, you have to
Okay.
press there.
Yeah.
Then only you can see the slide as well.
Yeah, please see, ma'am, in your screen corner, you can see our slide. Then you
Yes.
proceed.
Otherwise, you'll be seeing me in a small box.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, okay.
Okay, ma'am.
Okay. So I said demand schedule, it shows the relationship between price and quantity demanded. Demand curve is the graphical representation of the demand schedule. Now I have drawn a demand curve here. Now we'll be discussing about the properties of a demand curve. So you can note down the first property for a demand curve. You can note down 1, 2, 3, like that you can write down. Okay. The first one is it is downward sloping. The demand curve is downward sloping. See, I have drawn it like this. It is downward sloping. Second one, it is negatively sloped. Second property is it is negatively sloped. See, understand what a slope is. You take any 2 points along this curve, and when you divide it, you will be getting negative values. That is called slope in a graph. Okay. Since they are showing inverse relationship, you will be getting only negative values. Like any 2 points you're taking, A, B, C, D, any. So when you divide that, you will be getting A by B, C by D, or B by A. Whatever you are dividing, you will be getting only negative values. That is called slope of a graph. Okay. So just understand this much. Properties of the curve. First one is downward sloping. It is negatively sloped. It is drawn from left to right. It is drawn from left to right. Now this is known as the law of downward sloping curve.
Madam,
You
downward
can give a
sloping
capital L to it.
negatively is sloping.
Downward sloping. It is sloping down. It is sloping down. See, you can see it is going from left to right down. It is going. It is not going up, isn't it? That is
Madam,
called downward
is it
sloping.
negatively sloped? Negatively sloping and downward sloping is same thing.
Yes, same thing, same thing.
Okay.
Okay. It is downward sloping and negatively sloping because it shows inverse relationship, isn't it? For normal goods, price and quantity demanded are always inversely related. That's why when you can take examples and draw price 200, 100, 50. You can take your own values and put it and draw a graph and see. When you plot the points, you will get a downward sloping graph. Okay, downward sloping curve. That is the same as a negatively sloped one. And it is drawn from left to right, and it is called the law. Okay, law of downward sloping curve. Now this law has got 2 scientific explanations. The economists have given 2 scientific simple explanations. The first one is called the income effect. You can note down, it is called the income effect. So you can take down a definition for that. It is the increase or decrease in the, I'm giving a definition for the income effect. Okay. It is the increase or decrease in the real income due to opposite. Okay. Decrease or increase in the price of the commodity. Decrease or increase in the price of the commodity. It's a very simple explanation, very simple scientific explanation for this inverse relationship, isn't it? For this downward sloping curve. See, can you understand that effect? It is the increase or decrease in the real income. Suppose you are having an amount of money, you're going to buy some commodities in the supermarket. When you reach the supermarket, you have found that the price of so many commodities have varied, like some have fallen and some have increased. But your budget was the same. Okay, your budget was say 10,000. You have gone for the monthly purchase. You have gone to a supermarket. Your budget was 10,000, but certain commodities, their prices have fallen down. So suddenly what you will feel that your real income has increased, isn't it? You will feel that your real income has increased. Suppose you see that when you move along, you see that the prices of some commodities have increased a lot. Then what you feel? You'll feel a constraint in your budget. So that mentality that you're facing, okay, that is one of the scientific explanations. Just go through that once again. Income effect, that is a change in your real income because of the opposite change in the price of the commodity. Okay, see once again, it is the increase or decrease in real income due to the decrease or increase in the price of the commodity. I hope that is clear. It is understood, isn't it? Just take simple examples when you go through these points, because you need this only for the examination. Okay, you need all these papers, economics, business, maths, whatever you are learning. You need all these things only for the examination. You have to pass the examination. That is your aim. So take simple examples and try to learn the concepts. Be very clear to you. Okay, so I hope that income effect is clear to you. There is a variation in price and it brings a relative change in your real income also. Again, that is an inverse relationship, isn't it? Now, suppose you have seen that the prices of some commodities have gone much down. See, we have got a range for commodities. We know that we buy within this range. We have got an idea, isn't it? But suppose that range has fallen again down. That pricing has gone again down. So sometimes what happens to the consumer's eyes, that commodity becomes inferior good. Okay, so we are not willing to buy that now. It is very good that the prices come down, but still we have got a standard, we meet a standard, isn't it? So we feel that no, it has come very low. Maybe something is wrong with that commodity, something is wrong with that technology. We don't know what, isn't it? So after the initial happiness, what happens? We will say, no, I don't want that. I think something is wrong with that. So that commodity has become too inferior for me. So what we can do? We can substitute. We can substitute with the next best alternative. Okay, like you are going to buy some soap. So we are mostly branded, isn't it? We are using branded commodities. So when you're going for a very good branded commodity and suddenly the price has come down a lot, it has come down. So you don't want to buy that commodity anymore. What you can do? You can substitute it for the next best alternative. So the second scientific explanation is known as substitution effect. Okay, substitution effect. The first one was income effect. The second one is substitution effect. You can write that down. Here, commodities get substituted for the next best alternative. Here the commodities get substituted for the next best alternative. Same thing if the price has gone too high. So you don't want that commodity, you can afford some other, you can go for some other less costly commodity. Okay, so these are the scientific explanations that were given by the economists like Alfred Marshall. They were some of the economists that have given explanations for this law of downward sloping curve. Okay, so we'll just go through that once again, the things that we have gone through till now in demand. What is demand? Okay, demand is the ability and willingness to purchase a commodity. It is not just a desire, but also the purchasing power. Then we discussed about the demand schedule, isn't it? Demand schedule. It is a tabular form, shows the relationship between price and quantity demanded. If you have a schedule, you can draw a curve. In that graph, that curve is called demand curve because it is a demand schedule. You are getting demand curve. Now there are some properties for this demand curve. What are they? The first one is it is downward sloping. It is negatively sloped. It is drawn from left to right. It is known as the law of downward sloping curve with two scientific explanations we just had now, income effect and substitution effect. So here I have drawn a graph showing the demand for a single commodity. Only one curve, isn't it? So it shows the demand for a single commodity. Do you think it remains stationary like this every day for a commodity? The demand can change, isn't it? Demand for commodities can change. So that change is called shift. You can write down shift in the demand curve. The next concept is shift in the demand curve. Okay? Shift means so many terms can be used. An increase, an upward change, or a positive change. Increase, upward or positive change, or a decrease, downward or negative change. Okay? Shift means there is a shift from the original curve. There can either be an increase or a decrease. An increase means it can either be an upward change or a positive change. Suppose the demand for a commodity has increased in the locality. Suddenly there is an increase for the demand. Okay. Or there is a positive change. So you need to know the movement of the graph. So you can see where the higher values are in the graph, isn't it? The higher values are always to the right side of the curve. So an increase means movement of the curve from the original curve to the right. So note down, it is a rightward shift. Increase means it is the rightward shift. So increase means it is to the right side, and a decrease means it is to the left side because there are only less values here. Okay. So two terms. So here we are dealing with shift in the demand curve. Shift means it is a change, either it is an upward change or a downward change. And some terms also related to that: upward, positive, or increase, downward, negative, or decrease. Okay. Now if there is a sudden increase in the demand, you can say the graph will shift, the curve will shift from the original demand curve to the right. If there is a decrease faced in the locality, decrease of demand, then the curve will move to the left. So that is shift in the demand. Now this is only about a single commodity. Suppose you want to find what is the market demand. So market demand means it is in totality. You have to add all the demand of all the commodities. So you can just write down market demand can be found by summation, that is addition of individual demand of commodities, summation. You don't have to do anything, any problems, nothing. Just learn the theory wise. Okay. So finding the market demand is by adding individual demand of commodities. Biju, can you please share a slide for me?
Okay, madam. Okay,
Demand schedule, demand curve, market demand. It is the sum total of all individual demands. Okay, next slide, please. Factors behind, forces behind the market demand. That is very important. What are the factors or what are the forces that affect the demand of a commodity in the market. See, average income of consumers. Our income is very important, isn't it? It decides whether we should buy something or not, whether that commodity has got a demand or not. It depends on the income of the consumers. Then size of the market. Sometimes there will be a small market, sometimes the market will be very big. Okay, so that also influences. Prices of related commodities. Like when you are going to buy something, if there are other commodities in that segment also, like if you're going to buy fruits, one particular fruit in that season, of course there will be other fruits also in the market, isn't it? And there will be a slight variation of prices between all these fruits. Or suppose you're going to buy a car. So it is not that one fine day morning you're going to buy a car, isn't it? You will be studying, you will be watching the market for maybe 1 year at least, and then make a final decision what kind of car you want, what kind of segment, what is the type of car that you want, isn't it? It's a very big decision. But there are other cars in that particular segment also. So that is also a factor that depends on the demand for that particular commodity. Okay, so prices of related commodities means commodities that fall in the same segment as that of the commodity. Taste or preferences, whether you want that commodity, that is also a big factor. Then there can be some special influences like weather. Okay, that affects the demand. Weather can be there, government policies can be there, some changes, sudden changes can be there. Okay, so these are the basic factors that are behind the market demand. Shift in demand we have already discussed. It is an upward or a downward change in the demand. Okay, so these are the things that we had to go through in the demand side. Same thing we will be going through for the supply side. Okay. Biju, can you keep the next slide, please? Can you give the next slide, Biju? Next, we'll go through the supply. Supply also depends on the price of the commodity. What is supply? Supply is something kept for sale, isn't it? Biju, can I have the next slide, please? Yeah. So supply is something that is commodities kept for sale. Supply also depends on the price, but there will be a slight variation. Now you have to think from the producer's point of view. Can you tell me what is the difference? Demand and price were inversely related, but supply and price will be positively related. Okay. Yes, it will be positively related. Now, what is a supply schedule? You know, schedule means it is a tabular form. So in the supply schedule, there will be two variables. One is the price and second one is quantity supplied. Please note that term, quantity supplied. It is not supplied, it is not quantity, it is quantity supplied. So two variables in this schedule, price and quantity supplied. So again, you are having a tabular form. This is called a supply schedule. Now from this supply schedule, we can draw a graph, and in that graph, we will get a supply curve. Okay. Again, two axes.
Ma'am, we can't see the graph.
You can't see the board?
Yeah, ma'am.
There's some glare. You're having some glare?
No, ma'am, still I can't see the board.
Okay, same thing, and stop the screen share, ma'am. Then they can see it. Now you
It
can
is
see.
visible. It is visible.
It's okay.
It is visible now, ma'am.
Because you have to see the side one block is there that you have to click there.
Slide is not there. No?
Yeah, slide is here.
Supply curve. On the y-axis, I have taken price. Here, I am taking quantity supplied. So now the graph will be looking opposite like what we had in the demand curve. Okay. Demand curve was downward sloping. Here, the supply curve, the shape will be upward sloping. The curve will be upward sloping. Not many properties to learn here. You can but write down the supply curve. It is a graphical representation of the supply schedule. Okay. The graphical representation of the supply schedule. It is upward sloping. It is positively related. It is positively related or it is positively sloped. Okay, no law here. Okay, have you drawn this? Okay, next is shift in the supply curve. Same things that we had learned in the demand, the same things only we are going through here also. Shift in the supply curve. Shift means again, it is a change. Okay, change. That is what change? It can be a positive change or a negative change. So again, you can see that the higher values are side only, isn't it? The higher values are to the right side only. So there shouldn't be any confusion. The demand curve also shifts positively to the right. The supply curve will also shift positively to the right side. Okay, so increase in the supply or increase. Suppose there has been an increase in the sale of wheat in the locality, and to where will the graph move? It has to move to the right side only. And suppose there has been there is a decrease in the sale because of bad weather. Okay, sale in the wheat has gone down because of bad weather. Then to where will the graph move? It will go to the left side. That's called shift. Shift means a change. That's all. Okay. Shift,
Viju sir,
a change.
madam, I couldn't able to see the board or madam.
For everybody, is same problem or?
I can see only you, Viju sir.
Okay, you see
Yes, board is not showing, sir.
Sorry. Hello.
No, sir. Both are visible.
Both are visible.
Yes, sir. Both are
Yeah,
visible.
ma'am. Please check in your mobile. You just keep your mobile in wide mode. Wide. Yeah, in the corner you can see madam that taking the board that you can see. You can click
Board
there.
is visible now.
Okay.
No, madam, not there.
Okay.
Okay, madam.
Okay. So I was explaining about the shift in the supply curve. Same thing, the demand or shift in the supply of commodities. If it is an increase, it will move to the right side. Okay, so there is no confusion. If there is an increase, either in the demand or in the supply, it will always move to the right side because higher values of the graph are towards the right side. If there is a decrease, means it will move to the left side. Okay. Now we can give you next slide, please. Supply schedule. It shows the relationship between price and quantity supplied. Okay, quantity supplied. That term is very important because maybe for one term you can lose a mark. Okay, the options can be price and supply. The option can be price and quantity. The correct answer is price and quantity supplied. So whenever you are learning these points, try to frame them as MCQs. Then it will be easier for you to learn a subject. because we don't need it like you're studying for degree or PG. Okay, you just need it for the examination. So when you've got a topic with you, you yourself can do that. Make 10 MCQs from this particular portion. Okay, and keep all these questions with you. Then you don't have to carry the books. You don't have to carry all the lecture notes. Nothing. You just need all these MCQs with you. But you have to make it point. You have to make it. Okay, so that will be very easy for you. So you can try that also. Okay. So supply schedule, it shows the relationship between price and quantity supplied.
1 second.
Ma'am, you are not audible clear.
Voice is not audible as previously. Please check your mic, ma'am.
Yes, my mic has fallen down. Yes, my mic had fallen down. Okay.
Thank you, ma'am.
Okay. See, I was telling that when you're learning a particular topic, you should try to learn it as MCQs. You can frame questions. Okay, multiple type, you can frame questions. So you don't have to carry all the textbooks, all the lecture notes, everything to the examination. Because even at that point, you won't be able to go through all this. It's a vast syllabus, isn't it? So try to make some MCQs when you are going through a particular topic. Then it will be very easy for you to learn that also. You can understand that better than going through the paragraphs or the chapters, because some chapters in economics, even after you read it 2 or 3 times, you may not understand it properly. So now you have got some slides, now you are getting some lecture notes. From that, you can try to make some MCQs also. Like today, after the end of this session, in the evening, whenever you're free, okay, you can relax and go through these portions, what I have taught you today, and try to make them as MCQs. So then it will be very easy for you to understand those particular topics. Okay. See here, now supply schedule, the you have to see the terms, the correct term. It shows the relationship between price and quantity supply. So the question can be price and quantity, price and supply. So you have to note the correct terms there between price and quantity supplied. Okay, because just for the slip of a word, you can lose a mark. Now, supply curve, it is the graphical representation of the supply schedule. Now, what are the forces that affect the market supply? The first one is cost of production. So I had told you earlier what is cost of production or how cost of production is determined, isn't it? From the factors of production, there are four basic factors of production: land, labor, capital, and organization, and the remunerations that go for them. Like for land, you have to give rent. Laborers, you have to give wages. For capital, you get a rate of interest, and the organization gets a profit. So when you add all these A, B, C, D, plus you put an amount X, that is how you fix a price for a commodity, isn't it? Because you need some profit from that. So cost of production, as the cost of production increases, okay, there are certain commodities that are not available always in your market. So it has to come from there, it has to come from here. So what happens? The cost of production can increase. So when the cost of production increases, normally what happens? The price also increases. Okay, so that can also affect the supply in the market. Then also the prices of inputs, these factors, they are called inputs, and also the technology that you're using in it. Okay, suppose you're using a better, superior technology in the manufacturing of a product, definitely the price will be high, isn't it, than last year or the last commodity that you had produced. Like you can take the case of mobiles and TVs, isn't it? Every time the iPhone is changing, you're getting the next best version you're getting, isn't it? So what happens? The price also is increasing. Then the prices of related commodities, government policies affect, also special factors like I said, weather. All these things, they affect the market supply in an economy. Okay. So now we have gone through demand aspect, demand side we have gone through. We have gone through the supply side. We have to see how both of these function together in an economy. So what we have to do, you can take a paper, a good paper, draw a graph and draw both these curves together. Okay, like how I'm going to do. Take a good page, a full page you take and draw both these graphs together. I'm taking x-axis and y-axis. Y, O, X, price on the y-axis. Here, since we are taking both demand and supply, the variable will be quantity demanded and quantity supplied together. Okay, quantity demanded and quantity supplied. So you know the shape of the demand curve. So let's change that a little bit, because the curve, it is same as how I draw like this.
Ma'am, this graph is representation of demand and supply, relationship of demand and supply.
I didn't get you.
Ma'am, is this graph is a representation of a relationship between demand and supply?
Demand and supply together, we are going to see how it is going to work in the market. Okay, so you have learned about demand. You have learned everything about, almost everything about demand. What is demand, how it interacts with price, what is a demand schedule, how you can draw a graph for the commodities from a demand schedule, isn't it? Some properties, what is a shift in the demand, what is a market, how it is found, a market demand, all these things you have learned. Same thing you have learned about supply. What is supply, how supply and price vary, what is a supply schedule, how you can draw a graph from a supply schedule, what is the shift, what is the change you can, to where the graph will change, then what are the factors that are influencing them. Same you have learned about demand and supply, but now you have to learn this together. Okay, because it is together that it is functioning in the market for a commodity. It is not that till afternoon only the demand is functioning, after that only the supply. Together, every time it is together. Both the demand and the supply is functioning, or the mechanism is that it is functioning always together. Okay, so that's why I asked you to draw these two graphs. So instead of taking it like a downward sloping, it is the same as if you draw it just a bent curve. Okay, not too bent, just a downward curve. If you draw it as a straight line, you can draw. So that this is the demand curve DD. You can give it a name also, DD, demand curve. Supply curve SS. So together we are seeing how it functions in the economy. Okay, both the demand and supply of a particular commodity. So at some point of time in the market, what happens? The demand and supply has to coincide, isn't it? At some point of time, what will happen? The demand and supply of the commodities will be equal. They will be in equilibrium. That is called equilibrium. So how many units were demanded? That many units were put for sale. So here you can see that I am giving it E, equilibrium for at this point E. This is one condition you can see in the economy. One condition you can see in the economy here. Demand is equal to supply. Here, demand is equal to supply. Okay. So this is the best part where you can keep a price. Okay, we are still the producers of that firm. We had started in the first chapter. Okay, so here I want an optimum price. The best price that I can have is when demand is equal to supply. If there were 100 units of demand 100 units of sale was possible at this particular point because this particular point shows the equilibrium in the economy, in the market. So the price that I get here is the best price. This price is also called market clearing price. Please note down, it is also called market clearing price. The price where demand equals supply of commodities is called market clearing price. Okay, so that is the best price that a producer can get, also that a consumer can get. He is completely satisfied. So here the market is completely cleared. But see what happens with our mentality, producers, we want more profit, isn't it? After some time, we are not happy with that old price. We want to increase the price. So I'm just moving the price a bit up and down. So first I will move the price a bit to the maximum, say P1. You can also do that in your graph. You're moving the price to P1. Maximum profit I want. Okay. Now tell me what is the mechanism you can find here. How much units of demand? See the first, when you touch the demand curve and you come down, you can note a point M. M you can note here, M. Here you have touched the demand curve. Come straight down, you can denote there M. So OM is the demand for you. At this price, P1, OM is the demand. Now let us see what about the supply here. Again coming down, you can give it a letter N for the supply at this price P1. The sale will be ON units. So which will be more at this price, whether the demand will be more or whether the supply will be more. At this point, the producer is willing to supply.
Supply is more.
Supply is more. The producer is happy to give at this price. But what about the consumers? They are not willing because they know that it was already given.
Demand is less.
Yes, demand will be very less. So you can note one thing here, there will be surplus of commodities. There will be surplus of commodities anywhere about this market clearing price. There will be surplus of commodities. So what will the producer have to do now? He'll have to bring down the price because he can't keep it like that and sit and wait for people to come and buy at such high prices, isn't it? There is immense competition around. So he cannot sit back and wait. So what he'll have to do? He'll have to bring down the prices again till he reaches the market clearing price. So he'll have to come down. So there is another condition. Here, this is another condition. Condition 2, you can see that supply is greater than demand. Okay, supply is greater than demand. Now suppose I'm reducing the price. I'm reducing the price here to P2. Reducing the price to P2. So you can plot again what is the demand, how many units of demand. You can give it M1 and you can give N1 for supply. Guess you had a doubt there?
Ma'am, can you repeat that condition?
Yes,
one?
definitely. See, I have reduced the price now. This part is clear, isn't it? When the price was increased. Okay. So there surplus of commodities were available because supply was greater than demand. Now suppose I have changed the pricing. I have bought the prices very low. It is at some point called P2.
When condition one, can you please?
Condition 1. Condition 1. See, you have drawn two graphs here.
Yes.
One supply curve and one demand curve. So at some point your graph, the curves are meeting, isn't it?
Yes, ma'am.
At some point, the curves are meeting. That meeting point is called equilibrium.
Equilibrium.
That is the most stable condition any producer or the consumer in an economy can get. So that is the most stable condition, and that is called equilibrium. You can give it a name, you can give it a letter E. That is equilibrium.
It's
And
mean
at that price,
reasonable price.
equilibrium between demand and supply. Okay, equilibrium between demand and supply, and at that particular point, that pricing will be called market clearing price. It is called market clearing price because nothing is left in the market. How much demand was there, that many units were gone. Okay, so the market is completely cleared. All the producers, all the consumers are happy with that particular pricing. So that is about the equilibrium condition in the market. So suppose the prices are varying now. Suppose the price is high or suppose that the price is low. Now the higher price means the sale will be high because the producer is willing to sell at such a high price. But the consumer, he is not willing to buy, isn't it? The consumer is not willing to pay for such high prices. He can go for alternative products, or maybe he will wait. He doesn't want to buy it right now. So what happens? The producer will have to bring down slowly the prices till he reaches his optimal range. Okay, that depends on the producer where he has to stop. It depends on the producer. So what we have to understand from this mechanism, we have to understand that there are certain conditions in the economy. The first one is an equilibrium condition. Then there will be a disequilibrium condition. Equilibrium condition when the demand equals supply. Disequilibrium when they are not equal. So when they are not equal means either the supply will be higher than demand or the demand will be higher than the supply. So both conditions above and below are disequilibrium conditions. So that was because the price was varied. The price was very high. There was surplus in the economy. Now that the price has decreased, okay, now the price has decreased. You can give letters to it, like before you had given M and N. For demand, when you're touching the demand curve, you can give it M1. For supply, you can give it N1. And you can see what is higher here. See, that is the third condition. You can see demand is greater than supply, isn't it? Demand is greater than supply because the prices have been reduced to the minimum, isn't it? So here the consumers are very happy, but the producer is not happy. So what happens? The producer is not selling anything now because he doesn't want. He doesn't want to sell the commodities now at this low price. He is going to wait. He will wait till the prices can be increased. So what happens in the economy? There will be shortage of commodities. We are facing all these things, isn't it? In the economy, we are facing all these things. We are facing economics daily in our life. Okay, so here you can see there are shortage of commodities. So what he has to do with the price? Price for existing commodities can be lifted up. Okay, since there is shortage in the economy, what the producers can do now? They can increase the prices for the existing commodities and slowly it will reach the optimal or the market clearing price. Okay. So this graph is very important. So I hope the graph is clear to you. Three mechanisms: equilibrium condition, disequilibrium conditions when the prices were very high and when the prices were very low. Okay. So shall we take a short break? Yes.
Ma'am, I have a doubt.
Yes.
Ma'am, you have said that for abnormal good, for the rise of price, it will be demand will be increased for abnormal goods. The price is directly proportional to the demand.
No, no.
Price
Even
is
if
not
the
there.
price increases, demand also increases irrespective of the price.
Yeah, that is for abnormal commodities.
Ma'am, abnormal commodities and inferior goods are the same or different? Inferior goods.
Yeah, inferior goods also you can say like that. Like I will give that at the end of the class. Certain terms that you should go through. Okay, other than
Okay.
what is given in the textbook. So I have got that with me. They are called giffen goods. Okay, they are
Giffen.
very inferior commodities. Like when your income has increased, what happens? You will go for the better consumption. But still, when the prices have gone down, then that commodity will become inferior to you. So those commodities are given. That I will give to you at the end of the classes. Okay. Some terms that you should also go through, but not given in the textbook, but you can not given in the syllabus, but they may ask because CIB is not like JIB. They can ask anything from the syllabus. Okay. So can we take a short break now?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Okay, madam. Okay.
Okay.
Madam, I would want to see the forces for market supply slide once again. Is it possible
Yes,
now?
it is there. The slide is open.
No, is it?
Yes.
Yeah, it's open.
Yes, it is open. Can you see?
No, madam.
Ma'am, hello.
Where?
It is there now. Everything is available.
Ma'am, that mobile, if you are seeing in mobile, you keep the mobile in horizontal mode.
No. It's a laptop only. Yeah, now
Laptop mode, you can see that.
now I can see. Yeah, I can see it.
So we shall be back after 10 minutes.
Okay, ma'am.
Okay.
So Biju, can you give the timing?
Ma'am, 11:40, 45 or 11:40?
Okay. 11:40. Okay.
11:40.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Like all the topics you should go through. Otherwise, you'll think that, okay, next class, then we will go through it. But no, it's not like that. See, human mind is actually very sharp. Like now, if you have already made a recap of what all you have learned, like for the last 1.5 hours, if you have done a recap in between, okay, in between, if you have done a recap, it is all set in your mind. 90% is already saved in your mind. Very photographically, you can save it. You will remember which sentences in which page. You will definitely remember it like that. So what you have to do is, like we tell our kids, you should go through these things daily. On a daily basis, you should go through all these things. It's very easy for us to tell our kids, isn't it? Sit there, study, read this, what has been taught to you today, and see how it is difficult for us when we have to go through all this, when we have to learn, isn't it? It is difficult for us. So just think that you have to pass this examination. That is the aim. So for that, you are doing a bit of sacrifice here. So leave everything aside for say 1 or 2 hours. And I know you're very busy. You have got a very busy schedule. I know that. Yes. But still, since our aim is, see, it is approaching, isn't it? The exam in 1 or 2 months. The dates are out, I think, isn't it? So definitely you should sit with that clear mind. You should make a schedule. 1 or 2 hours you have to spend for this. Otherwise, whatever effort you have made, whatever effort I am making, it won't be useful. Okay, see, we are also giving that effort. We want you to pass this examination the first time itself. It's not that I want to see you again for the next batch. Okay, I want you all to pass in this coming examination itself.
Madam, one question.
Yes.
Actually, what you taught just now, we prepared earlier, but when coming to the exam, it's like a completely blank. It's completely out of the syllabus.
No, it is not completely out of the syllabus. See, you have to, your approach should be different. See, when you were sitting for the JIB exam, it was just a degree level. Okay, so there mostly everything is coming from inside the syllabus. You only have to learn all those things inside the syllabus. That is what basically I think. Okay, see, I'm not a banker. I'm a lecturer. I'm a profession, lecturer profession. Okay, I'm not in the banking. I have only the relation like this, teaching bankers. Okay. So what I have felt for so many years, I've been taking these classes for the last 10 years. So what I have felt is that JIB and CIB are totally different. See, JIB means more like from the syllabus, it will be asked, but CIB means it is not like that. Anything like when you are, I don't know if you have, or if any of your relations have written civil service exams, you know. So like that, anything can be asked. Anything can be asked. So you have to be prepared for that. But still, there is a good thing about economics, and that is mostly only 10 to 20 marks only. If you have already attempted it, you must know that not so many questions are asked from economics. 7 marks to maybe 10 to 20 marks maximum only from economics it will come. So, and also almost 90% marks you can score in those 10-20 questions. Because I'm sure what you will be learning from these classes. See, these classes they are different from what you're self-learning. Okay, self-learning is different from how you're getting a guidance. So when you're getting a guidance, we'll be pointing out to you the important sections to go through. Some sections you can leave. Okay, some sections are not so important. Some sections are problem-based topics. There you have to give more weightage. Some portions there only the theory type questions will come. So like that, we can give you a guidance in how you have to study. But still, CIB is totally different from JIB. And in CIB, suppose I'm teaching you demand, you'll have to go a bit more wider. You have to do a bit more reading about what is demand, what are the different things, who were the different economies associated with demand theories. Okay, I know it's not easy because you have to learn everything in a concise manner, and that too only for a limited, the time period is very short. So I know it's very difficult. So anyway, we have to try our best, and I'll try to give you whatever extra things I can that is related to these topics. I'm not sticking to the textbook, but I'm giving you so many points also, extra also information I'm giving you. And also it is your duty also to search, keep searching, keep surfing. Okay, what all things you can connect with these terms. So as we go on, I will point you out all those things where you have to look for things. Okay. Otherwise, basically, you can stick on to these lecture notes. And definitely, you should have a textbook. You should read the textbook at least once. You should read the textbook. Some portions are not easy to read. Some chapters are not easy. Some chapters are very, very, frankly, I'm telling you, it's not so interesting also. But maybe my lectures and my some pointing out can help you. Okay, clear the economics paper. That I can definitely say. You can definitely clear the economics part. So that may help you in other papers also to get the aggregate mark. This paper may help you that way. Okay. So that is, I have to tell you about economics. Yes, shall we continue?
Ma'am, most of the questions are like case studies.
Yeah.
So after the completion of the concept, can you please relate it with some case study example like the demand and
Yes,
supply?
we will be doing problems. Okay, we have got problems to do. But before that,
again, the demand and supply both, once again you explain the term.
Demand and supply. See, I didn't get you. Okay. See, we have got some topics that is clearly problem based.
Madam.
So we will be giving more importance to the problems. Okay. So we will be doing all that. So we will go to the next chapter. I think a lot of time is already consumed. Anyway,
Yes, ma'am.
I hope you will relate to what I am telling you. Okay. That is, take my words seriously so that you can clear the exam this time itself. Okay. So my best wishes to all of you.
Thank you.
So we have cleared 2 chapters here. The first one was fundamentals of economics. Fundamentals of economics, we have gone through what is economics, who is the father of economics, then who are the other important economists, what are their definitions given to economics. See, we have studied 3 definitions, we have studied 3 or 4 economists, but they are not the only people in economics. Okay, they are not the only people in economics or the only definitions in economics. But we have to learn only 3 definitions: wealth definition, welfare definition, and scarcity definition. There are other definitions also. Growth definition is there, giving more importance to the growth of the economy by Sam Wilson. But you don't have to learn that. So basically, sticking on to the textbook, you and the lecture notes, you can just search. But I don't think that will come, because so many questions, as it is, there are so many other important questions also. Okay. So in the first topic, we had economists, their definitions, then how economics was classified into 2 different subjects, then how many types of problems, central problems, and also how the economies can be classified, and what is laissez-faire economy. So these are the main points that you have to learn in the first chapter. Now in the second chapter, the name of the chapter is demand and supply. We learn what is demand schedule, then how you can draw a graph, demand graph, how a demand curve looks like, what are the different properties of a demand curve, why is it called the law of downward sloping curve, what are the 2 scientific explanations that the economists have given, what is the shift in the demand curve, what do you mean by a shift, what is that change, whether positive or negative change. That was about a single commodity. Now what is a market demand, how demand in a locality can be found, that is by summation. What are the factors that affect the market demand? So many things, like our personal income is a big factor, our taste and preferences, government policies keep changing, then we have to change our view or our buying, isn't it? So many things. Then we went through what is supply, what are the different concepts in supply. Same thing that we learned in demand. What is supply schedule? How to draw a supply curve? Then what are some of the properties of a supply curve? Supply shift. Then what are the factors that are affecting the market supply? How can you find the market supply? That is again the summation. It's just like market demand. It is just finding the totality, summation. You can note down that, because I know that we haven't mentioned that. So you can note down that market supply is found by summation of individual supply of commodities. And then what we can do, we can combine both of these like we did in the graph. We have got a demand curve, we have got a supply curve. And from that, you can find what are the different mechanisms that can be worked out in the economy. So there can be an equilibrium stage, there can be disequilibriums. Equilibrium stage happens when demand is equal to the supply. And disequilibrium mostly in the economy because the market clearing price is not always found. Okay, the producers and consumers, because of the demand and supply of commodities, they cannot always fix at the market clearing price. So there will be surplus in the economy, there will be shortages in the economy. So these things are what normally happen in the real world, and that is economics. Okay, so we'll just go through another table there. Next slide, Biju. Yeah. See here, it's a table that some variables are given in the table. The same table is there in your textbook also. You can see 5 options are there. Price is given, quantity demanded is given, quantity supplied is given. It shows the size of the market and what is the pressure on the price. So you can see the prices are going down, 500, 400, 300, 200, 100. Quantity demanded and price will be inversely related. You can see that from the graph. You can split this graph also. You can find a demand schedule in this. You can find a supply schedule in this. But since we want Everything together, we have got it in one particular schedule. Okay, now the quantity demanded, it is going up, and the quantity demand, yes, it is going up, and the quantity supplied is going down, because we know that it is related, similarly related to the pricing. Okay, so which is the point where we can have a market clearing price?
C.
That condition, yes.
C.
It is the condition C where you can get equilibrium. So at that point, for 300 rupees, you can see that 12 million boxes quantity demanded are supplied for the same amount, 12 million boxes. So at that point, you can see the pressure on the price is neutral. There is no pressure on the price. Okay, high or low, there is no such pressure. Otherwise, the market will be in disequilibrium above or below that condition C. Okay, just a table for your information. Then other than this, that is something related to this, but not in your textbook. I have got another slide for you. Biju, can you give? Yeah. Please note this down. Elasticity of demand. Just note that down, please, or you can take a screenshot for the time being. But later on, I think you will definitely write it down, okay? Because some portions, they are important, and problem can be asked from this particular portion. Elasticity of demand. See, elasticity of demand means how demand's elasticity means the responsiveness of demand, how demand responds to certain factors. Okay, first we'll see what is the definition of elasticity of demand. It is the relative change in the total amount of goods and services that are demanded by the market or an individual. It is the change, how our demand changes. Okay. Relative change in the total amount of goods and services that are demanded by the market or an individual. How an individual's demand brings a change. Okay. Now there are two factors that can bring that change, or there are two factors that can help in this elasticity. One is price elasticity, another one is income elasticity. That is, demand can respond to two factors. One is to a change in income. Like our income changes, definitely our demand for commodities will also change. Okay. Price of commodities keep on changing, our demand will also change. Okay. So try to understand in simpler terms, or try to understand with simple examples. Okay. Elasticity of demand of durable goods is greater than 1. Just some points, important points I have made in this slide. Okay. Durable goods, it is required by us daily. So elasticity will always be greater. That is, elasticity will be greater means that numerator, isn't it? That is the quantity demanded. That quantity demanded will always be greater. So that is, elasticity of demand of durable goods will always be greater than 1. So I felt that this point is important. That's why I have put in the slide. Next is income elasticity of demand. Income elasticity, how demand responds to change in income. So first one was how demand change responds to a change in the price. Next is how demand responds to the change in the income. So again, we have got percentage change in quantity demanded. The numerator will be the same. Okay, percentage change in the quantity demanded by percentage change in income. So there you have to find dq delta q by q divided by delta I or delta y. Y is denoted as income in economics. Okay, delta y by y. Okay, just this much in this chapter.